Hey, welcome to another episode of the Midwest Mindset, everybody. Coming off of last week's podcast. Oh, wow. That was such a treat, man, to see Chad, not only live via Zoom, because we ended up having to switch platforms. But it was a great treat for me to not only interview him, but have a discussion with him. And hopefully there's some really key points. I love some of the key points that he brought up about how he raised his kids and being a father with his career and everything that he was going on. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, please go back in and listen to it, or go to my YouTube channel and check it out. So that was a treat. So this week though, so the whole idea behind the Midwest Mindset is to focus our attention on a growth mindset, right? A growth right here, this color diagram behind me. The color over here is the growth mindset. I get you, I can do, there's this opportunity that I see ahead of me, versus that fixed mindset. I can't do, I need to, or I have to, or just all of that burden, right? So that's the goal of this, right? To talk about the growth opportunities, especially people growing up in the Midwest. And that was, one of the reasons why BJ and I started this. Today's topic though, is a little bit of me opening up about my past a little bit. There was plenty of times in the past where I was not so much on this side of the diagram. I was more on this fixed mindset. And so today we're going to talk about pessimism. And for a long time, I was still an outgoing person when I was younger, through college, high school, all those things. I was optimistic at certain times. I was outgoing. I definitely craved attention. That still probably hasn't changed that much, but I was a lot more pessimistic than I am now. And I was really thinking about this as I was coming up with this topic, and I was like, what was that change? What was that shift for me? So I when I was looking into that, I obviously found a top 5 list on how to overcome pessimism. But one of the things that really resonated with me is this growth mindset, right? The whole Carol Dweck book right here that I'm pointing to on mindset is kind of the trigger for me that really jumped me, and then launched this career that I've started now in the coaching business. But specifically, the pessimistic person was somebody. When I was more pessimistic back in the day, I would be, what did I sound like? Well, I would talk behind people's back. Not always, but often at group settings, it was easy to jump on a conversation. If somebody was throwing somebody under the bus, it was easier to hop on that conversation, because guess what? I was vying for that person's attention, the person that was at this party or this get together, because it felt easy. It's much easier to be inclusive by being negative, if that makes any sense, which it doesn't now as I look full circle. But at the time, a lot of times we do that because it's easier. It's easier to be negative. It's easier to be pessimistic, and to say that the sky is falling, or things are going poorly, that type of thing. But I found out that after a long period of time, it wasn't serving me to be pessimistic. So I was trying to think of how I got to where I am now. And when I looked at these top 5 ways to stop pessimistic thinking and switch to optimistic thinking, a couple of them resonated with me, a couple of them didn't. So I'm going to start real quick with the ones that didn't. So one of the things that they talk about, number 1, would be practicing gratitude on a daily basis. Now, that makes a lot of sense to me. Big picture wise, it makes a lot of sense. If we're thankful for more things, and even the things that we have, the more optimistic you will be, right? It's hard to be a pessimist. It's hard to be negative. It's hard to be fearful and have that anxiety when you're really grateful for something. And so I understand that concept. But when I started journaling and just saying, oh, I'm grateful for this, I found myself just saying, I'm always grateful for my family, for my wife and kids. And I just always was writing that same thing. So I really didn't go into specifics. So that didn't work for me right away. Now I use this as part of my journaling practice, and it works great. So that was number 1. So if you have that opportunity, maybe that works for you. Practice gratitude on a daily basis. It does work for me now. It didn't work for me to get transitioned over. So I'll explain a little bit more. So number 2 was engage with optimists and consider volunteering. Now that one I like. I think it's a good one. It wasn't what got me to where I am now, though. It wasn't that catalyst. It wasn't that thing. But I see that when you get engaged with other positive people, you know, the old theory of you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're spending time with negative people, you're much more likely to be that pessimistic person in that conversation moving forward, right? So that makes sense to me to stay around, you know, positive people versus negative people. And then obviously volunteering is a perfect opportunity for you to get out of that mindset of feeling good about yourself. It feels good to volunteer. It feels good to serve others. In fact, that's, you know, once again, I said serve. That's my word for the year is service. How can I be a service of others? Because I know that when I am serving others, I feel better about myself, as well as hopefully I'm helping other people. So that's number 2. And that definitely works for me now. Once again, wasn't the thing that got me over to the other side to where I am now. Number 3 is try new ways of thinking. That makes sense to me, right? New ways of thinking to get out of that our monkey mind here, where we're getting into this negativity swirl that we can do from time to time, whether it's I have to lose more weight, or I have to switch jobs, I'm not happy with my career, or my relationships aren't very valuable to me right now, so I have to fix that. And you're always fixing, you're always working on something, and you're not enjoying the now. And so new ways of thinking makes sense, right? If we could think a little differently, we could change our actions. If we change our actions a little differently, then we can change our results, right? That makes sense to me. Once again, wasn't the catalyst. These next 2 were the big things for me. So once again, just to go back. So practice gratitude on a daily basis is a great one. I use it all the time now. Number 2, engage with optimists or optimistic people more often than not, or volunteer, which definitely is something that's working for me now. Number 3 is try new ways of thinking. Love it. Get out of that monkey mind, get into that growth mindset. The next 2 are really the ones that brought me over. So if none of those 3 have, maybe these next 2 will be something that gets you out of that pessimistic mindset, pessimistic thinking, pessimistic personality, into more of that optimist personality. That's somebody that you want to be with those 5 people. You're one of those 5 people, hopefully. So the first one is expect the worst, but hope for the best. This is something that I got from meditations. Marcus Aurelius talks specifically about this. He said, you know, he is the emperor of Rome. He's got the whole Roman Empire that he's in charge of. He has all this responsibility, all these headaches. He has all these people vying to get his power that he currently already has. And he woke up every morning and he journaled, and he spoke specifically about, know that you're going to be triggered by this particular senator, this particular citizen of the Roman Empire. He goes, know that those people are going to trigger you, but yet don't give them the power. Don't let them trigger you. So expecting kind of the worst, expecting that bad thing's going to happen, but then showing up differently, that's a superpower. And that was one thing that really kind of stuck with me. If I could know that I'm going to be triggered and not succumb to it, wow, that's pretty cool. And I know that sounds kind of goofy. Like if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're supposed to get upset and you're supposed to be mad at that person, right? Well, what if you did just the opposite? What if you get cut off and you're literally like, wow, that person really needs a hug? And that sounds funny as I say it, but you know what I mean? That's where I really started to see the change. When I started thinking of things differently, opposite of how I was either taught or I learned when I was a kid, or that pessimistic lifestyle that I used to live. Now, I also know that when I was a pessimistic person back in the day, I was, and that's, by the way, it's not all the time. I just found myself at certain times when I wasn't at my best, I was, showing up pessimistically. But when I was that person, there was a lot of fear and anxiety kind of ruling that particular mindset that I was in back then. And I've confronted those fears. I've confronted that anxiety and worked through that stuff. So it just isn't that burden on myself anymore. So that's been very helpful. So once again, expect the worst, but hope for the best. And I think you'll be more pleased with the outcomes and changing the way you think. So that's number 4. Number 5 is practice mindfulness. This is the one that really has been the game changer for me. Each and every day, I either listen to a podcast. You can feel free to listen to this podcast. Hopefully this will cheer you up a little bit or change the way you think. But I focus on mindfulness. So my morning routine is very strict. I wake up, I do my exercises, I make my bed, I go to the bathroom, I give myself that high five. I literally smile in the mirror and I do the cheesy high five to myself. Changing my mindfulness is allowed me to show up differently in so many different aspects of my life. In my career, I show up differently. Do I absolutely love my job? There's parts of it that I love, but also realizing that I'm in this job for certain things that are really serving me right now, which is really kind of cool. And I'm excited about how I can make that a little bit more just positive and just a little bit more of an opportunity for me to be more successful in the future. And then, relationships. In my relationships with not only my current wife and 2 kids, but my extended family and my family and friends. I feel like I'm showing up better by being a little bit more curious, by being a little bit more mindful. So that mindfulness has really helped me through that. And then also in all the different ways of serving the community. I've looked for new opportunities. I'm getting those opportunities. Now it's my opportunity. It's my responsibility, but it's also my pleasure to show up and see how I can serve others. And that all comes from that mindfulness practice that I've really started to, I just do on a regular basis. I do it every single day. And so these 5 things are 5 ways to overcome pessimism. But the one that's worked for me the most is this mindfulness and just being mindful of what I can control versus what I can't control. And when you break it down to that, it just simplifies a lot of things for me. So once again, I wanted to be short, wanted to be quick with some of these messages. Hopefully I wasn't too redundant, but I do want to leave you with a passage out of this book, The Daily Stoic, that I've read. And I think it really kind of hit home with the topic that we're talking about today around pessimism and how to overcome that pessimistic mindset and be more mindful of how we show up. In today, February 17th, it talks about, and my wife and my mother's birthday. So happy birthday to both of those beautiful women in my life. But today's quote just says, "I'll be happy when I graduate." We tell ourselves, "I'll be happy when I get this promotion, when this diet pays off, when I have the money that my parents never had." Conditional happiness is what psychologists call this kind of thinking. Like the horizon, you walk for miles and miles and you never reach it. You won't even get any closer. So eagerly anticipating some future event, passionately imagining something you desire, looking forward to some happy scenario, as pleasurable as these activities might seem, they ruin your chance for happiness here and now. So my whole point on finishing with this quote is just enjoy the now. Enjoy each and every day that we get to spend on this earth. I don't know if any of you have had a loved one die recently. Those are always triggers a little bit where we kind of look back and reflect a little bit, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a pet or animal, whatever it might be. Whenever we have something like that happen in our lives, it's a great time to reflect and say, geez, how could I, be a little bit more in tune with the now? Well, this is that little reminder for you today. Get out of that pessimistic mindset by using one of these 5 tools and start enjoying your today. So hope this was helpful for you guys. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to our guest in March. I'll still keep that a secret until we lock down a date and time, but hope you have a great weekend and we'll talk soon, guys.